Hello everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Tenuity. This is the Friday show that reviews the most significant media news stories of the week. I'm your host, Marcus Johnson. In today's show, how to fix Facebook.
You need to go where your digital audiences are, and there's not much choice, honestly, if you want scale and reach and analytics, all the things that Facebook makes ad buying so easy for.
Netflix adds gaming.
I think Netflix is also trying to figure out how to become an entertainment hub. We're talking a lot about these super apps right now.
TikTok on TVs.
As TikTok is expanding the length of their videos, it's sort of a natural next step if they want to compete with long-form video platforms like YouTube.
Children using social media, the unspoken reasons employees don't want remote work to end, and how much do people talk about themselves? All right, folks, join me for this episode. We have three people. Let's meet them. We start with our principal analyst who covers our retail and e-commerce desk. It's Susie David Canyon.
Hey, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Hello there, Susie. We're also joined by Director of Reports, Rahul Chadha.
Hi, guys.
Hey, chap. And finally, we have one of our analysts on the retail and e-commerce team is Blake Drosh.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, buddy. So, what do we have in store for you today, folks? 4 segments as per usual. We start with the story of the week, how to fix Facebook, if it needs fixing, that is. We then move to the game of the week, the second segment, where our contestants, Susie, Blake, and Rahul, will play a pretend game for pretend points for a pretend championship belt. Get excited. We then move to working from somewhere. That's our next segment, where we talk about what it's like to work remotely, hybrid, in the office, this new way of doing things. And then finally, dinner party data, where we talk amongst ourselves about things we just recently learned. Ourselves and you. Thanks for hanging out. Anyway, today's story of the week, we start with how to fix Facebook. How do you fix Facebook? Asks Shirin Ghaffari. Can Facebook be redeemed? 12 leading experts share bold solutions to the company's urgent problems, she writes in a recent article for Recode. She believes that, quote, Facebook is broken, and after a recent deluge of damning internal company leaks to the press and Congress, the world has unassailable proof of how troubled it really is, close quote. To try and figure out whether Facebook can actually be fixed, Ms. Ghaffari looks at 12 Recode interviews of leading thinkers and leaders on Facebook today, from Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is leading the new technology legislation charge, to Stanford Internet Observatory researcher Renee DiResta, one of the first to study viral misinformation on Facebook, to former senior Facebook executive Brian Boland, who is speaking out publicly against the company's business practices. So all those folks and more. And the various suggestions center around themes from antitrust enforcement, making Facebook spin off companies like Instagram or WhatsApp, to creating a federal agency regulating safety standards on the internet the way the FDA, Federal Drug Administration, does for food and drugs, or changing Facebook's leadership, replacing Mark Zuckerberg as the CEO or other key figures, to regulating algorithms. Folks, they're all suggestions we've heard before, but kind of all put into one article that's kind of culminated around this point where Facebook is in a lot of hot water, even if its bottom line doesn't suggest so. So the question here, folks, is how is Facebook a problem? And based on some of these suggestions, what do you think is the best way to fix that problem, if there even is one?
I think the solution or the suggestion that resonated the most with me was the one that said to treat it like alcohol.
Yeah, me too. Derek Thompson, the staff writer over at The Atlantic, was suggesting that one.
Yeah, I think it's just an issue of a strategy versus tactics, and I think all the other solutions are tactics, and this is a strategy. It's like, how do we create a framework, to think about social media? I think I like the idea that there's a happy medium where the concept of social media can be applied positively, but within some kind of framework that understands the potential dangers that it can visit on society. Just like alcohol.
Yeah, so Mr. Thompson, staff writer of The Atlantic, was saying, as Rahul mentioned, I would treat social media the way we treat alcohol, have bans and clearer limitations to use among teenagers, and study this is the part I really like, and study the effects of social media on anxiety, depression, and negative social comparison. It seems like every time there's a study, it's kind of haphazard. There's not kind of a very focused effort to really, really study, to have a good kind of comprehensive understanding and multiple studies on this type of behavior, especially on young people, their social media use and young people. The second point he makes, Mr. Thompson, is I would continue to shame Facebook to edit its algorithm in a way that downshifts the emphasis on high arousal emotions such as anger and outrage. I thought that was interesting. It seems to be much more focused on the algorithms here and what the government can do to try to, I guess, get more transparency on those, but also steer Facebook away from promoting more insightful, more angry content, more content that's based on outrage.
So for me, I think I understand these lofty goals and I take a different perspective in that there's so much tension. And Facebook tried so hard to create a positive, fun space. And then over time, it sort of got out of control. And like, how do you regulate something that is so vast? And then who are the right people to regulate that? And how can you make decisions? I mean, it's so subjective. How do you make decisions about what's right and what's wrong? So it's like catch-22. What I found that resonated the most is one of the writers who was talking about we elicit bad behavior with bad KPIs and compensation, right? And if the president of the company or the CEO is only worried about making money and not about some of the other components of a positive society, then this is what they're going to do. They're going to lie and cheat and come up with the best possible way to make money.
Yeah. So incentives, the business model predicated on getting people's attention, as a lot of other companies are. And so you do everything you can to do that so you can make more money so shareholders are happy. I was wondering whether a change of leadership could change that at all. And looking back at some of the examples we've seen of companies, especially with the name change, we've seen name changes in the past with BP, Total, Philip Morris, companies like that who changed their name for one reason or another. And how much could that change the reputation of a company? How much could that change the culture of a company, the way a company does business? So it was interesting that a lot of people, or more calls now for Mark, especially in this article, to kind of step aside and whether a change of leadership could be enough to help the brand of Facebook. Blake, what jumped out to you the most?
Yeah, I think that maybe a change in leadership or the name change might help Facebook to some marginal degree. But, going back to what Rahul was saying about just having a regulatory body is probably the long-term solution here, because I think it often gets overlooked that, yes, Facebook is the largest social network in the nation, so they draw a lot of heat. But things like whether or not social media is having a positive effect on society, algorithms, privacy, these are all things that are going to need to be dealt with on other social networks as well. So while Facebook might be the one that's sort of getting the brunt of all of this criticism at this point, as years go by and Facebook continues to lose more of its relevancy, which is going to happen because it's already starting to happen to, losing its relevancy to TikTok, and so is Instagram and the next platform to come around. All of these platforms are going to gain users from the power of their algorithm and the cultural relevance that they have. And it's always going to be a question of, is this good for society? Is this good for mental health? Is the algorithm too powerful for, the user's own good? So I think we really do need to have some sort of framework in place that's going to be able to not only regulate Facebook, but regulate all of the other social networks that are around right now and that appear down the line.
So nearly 2 billion people in the world use Facebook every single day. That's 1/4 of the people on the planet Earth. In July, August, and September, just gone, Facebook added 22 million new users to its total. That's a Florida's worth of users, the third most populated state in the country. In addition to that, they've also already made $82 billion this year. That's just in 3 quarters. That's the same amount of money that they made all of last year. We've not even had the most lucrative Q4 yet. By the end of the year, Facebook would have likely made enough money to have broken the $100 billion mark and be able to buy, that's enough money to buy every NFL team. All of them, all 32, you could buy them all based on their current valuation. So I guess my point here is, does it need, B, C, it's the kind of the same question. Does it need fixing? And kind of at the same time, is having this kind of brand reputation, this kind of a negative brand reputation, sustainable / gonna be problematic at any point? Or is it just something that is going to be swirling around Facebook, and they deal with it and they continue to make money.
I mean, if you're talking about does Facebook face a business problem, I mean, I think you just kind of prove
or
that
will
no.
it?
The answer
Could
is
it?
no. Like they're going to keep making money.
Right. Not now, but could it perhaps?
Well, I think too the problem with Facebook or advertisers, I guess digital marketers, if they were trying to figure out where to place their ad buys, they don't have any other options. There's Google and there's Facebook, and if you're selling like a physical good, and Amazon obviously is growing in importance, but if you're selling a digital good or service, you need to go where your digital audiences are, and there's not much choice, honestly, if you want scale and reach and analytics, all the things that Facebook makes ad buying so easy for. There's just like no other opportunities out there for marketers, really.
Yeah, even amongst the big players, because the triopoly, Amazon, Facebook, and Google, Facebook's holding its own. It's maintaining its share. It's even though Amazon's gaining share, it's not at the expense of Facebook. So very valid points. That's all we've got time for the story of the week. Time now for the game of the week, but first a quick word from our sponsor, Tinuiti. Gone are the days of brands spilling money into one colossal advertising campaign and then hoping it performs at scale. All advertising is going digital, all digital is measurable, and therefore all advertising is performance. Is your brand ready to rethink media, to rethink advertising, to rethink agencies? Rethink performance with Tinuiti, the largest independent performance marketing firm across streaming TV and the triopoly of Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Find out how at rethinkperformance.com. All right, folks, we are back. Time now for the game of the week. Today's game, What's the Point? Where I read out 4 stories and Susie, Blake, and Rahul give us their best takeaways. Okay answers get 1 point, good answers get 2, and offensively good answers get 3 points. 20 seconds each before they hear this. Whoever has the most points wins, gets the last word. We start with Rahul. Netflix adds gaming as our first round. Netflix users who are Android people can now play 5 titles, including a card game and 2 games based on the streaming company's hit show Stranger Things on Netflix, writes Joseph Bassani of the Wall Street Journal. Games on Netflix will be available on Apple devices in the coming months. There's no additional cost to play the game, and there's also no ads or in-app purchases to be seen, at least as of yet. Rahul, Netflix adds gaming. What's the point?
I mean, 2 things jumped out at me about this. One is that it seems like they're relying on their owned IP to create games right now. It could just be a way for them to market their content smartly, in an increasingly crowded streaming service landscape. And the other thing that really jumped out to me is that you can, as of now, only play these games on a mobile device. And as you noted, they're not monetizing via in-app purchases or ads. So really, I think what they're trying to do is create that stickiness in an ever increasingly large Netflix ecosystem to keep their subscribers from churning. It's like, let's keep expanding the kind of content offerings that we can give our users to create that value for them.
Susie.
I would also add that it started on Android, so that says a lot about the mobile phone industry. For those of you who know, I am an Android believer, and I'm very excited that it started on Android. But also, to add to what Rahul was saying, you think I have stock in Android phones, but I don't.
She does. What's an Android believer? Hold the phone. What is an Android believer?
That is someone who believes that Androids are better telephones, that make better pictures, and that have a lot of amazing content before it goes to Apple.
So you mean someone who's correct. That's what you mean.
Yes.
A good person. Okay,
Yes.
fair enough. Moving on.
The only thing I wanted to add to what Rahul said so eloquently was that I think Netflix is also trying to figure out how to become an entertainment hub. We're talking a lot about these super apps right now. So this is another way for Netflix to find that stickiness that Rahul is talking about outside of just watching TV, so that people keep coming back to them for other uses.
Blake.
Yeah, I think this is just sort of one step along the way to, Netflix having its own theme park. They're creating different types of assets with their IP, whether it's new games or merchandise that they're, partnering with retailers to sell. So it's just basically, if you're going to spend all of this money producing your own original content, you might try and stretch those dollars and build as strong of a brand as possible.
Can I tell you how it just occurred to me that this game is called What's the Point? Because Rahul always wins. So, what's the point of playing?
That's not why it's called. I mean, yeah, that too, actually.
I think I'm
So it's
1
it's a
in
double
5
meaning.
or something like that. I'm not sure where this idea comes from.
If I could let no one win, I would do that. But someone's got to.
You're all losers.
So.
Oh, he's done that before. Don't let him say that he hasn't.
Round 2. TikTok on TVs. Regular TikTok users often watch over an hour of that content per day, according to a study by Branded Research. And now, thanks to Amazon's new TikTok app for its Fire TV streaming devices, you can watch TikTok on your TV. But is it TikTok if it's on a TV screen? Questions Dalvin Brown of the Wall Street Journal. Susie, TikTok on TVs, what's the point?
I actually don't think there's a point. I don't know why TikTok would want to be on TV. I think it takes away everything that they're trying to do.
Boom. Blake.
I think, as TikTok is expanding the length of their videos, it's sort of a natural next step if they want to compete with long form video platforms like YouTube down the line. And also, it's an immersive mobile experience. It takes up the whole screen. So I think as sort of dual viewership is very popular, it can add extra eyeballs to have an extra screen to be playing TikTok videos on if somebody needs, another screen like their mobile phone to do something else.
But that's a thing. Like, how would it be on TV and still have the same interactive experience that TikTok folks love?
Well, I guess, yeah, that's the difficulty here. And that's something that the kind of article points to is it is going to be a less personal experience, whether if you're casting the content or mirroring the content from your phone to that screen, maybe that can help because it is much more of obviously a shared experience. But yeah, it's definitely going to be one of the challenges. Rahul, thoughts?
I mean, I agree with Susie. I think all the product features that make the experience so compelling on a phone, the article points out are vertical videos and the scroll, the ability to duet, things like that. They don't carry over to TV. And I also think that TikTok's positioning on this is a little strange, like the idea that the family's all going to gather around the TV and like watch TikTok. It's like the reality is, I think for most families these days is everybody's on a personal device. They're not those days of us all gathering around the TV to watch some must-see viewing are kind of gone, I think.
I do wonder, though, is there a world in which young people will sit in front of a TV and quote-unquote maybe they scroll using their phone as the controller and it scrolls on the TV and they go through TikTok videos and they do that for an hour versus watch Netflix? Because this study was suggesting that people do spend an hour on TikTok. We have TikTok numbers by TikTok users in terms of minutes per day up around, I think it's 37 minutes ahead of Facebook at this point, leading all social platforms. So if young people are willing to sit there and do it on their phone, would they not be willing to sit on the couch and do that on a television?
No, that's a hard no. Kids want to be in their room alone, interacting with their phone and their friends.
But kids have TVs in their rooms, right?
Oh, but then that takes away from the whole
the rich
family.
Ones. Some of those rich kids have them.
That takes away from that whole family experience, which seemed like that's what they're trying to do, to convince us.
Yeah.
But
I'm skeptical that kids care about what using a TV as a increased real estate is really going to be of any value to them, especially for these digitally native kids. It's like the phone is their first screen. It's kind of like the easiest screen for them to interact on. I watch people younger than me want to do things on their phone that I would never try to do. Like, I don't know, like make a deposit in my make a contribution to my 401k. I'm just like, no, I'm saving that for the laptop. But I'm old,
Rosa, I'm going to see someone. I'm going to go down and see Phil at the bank. Round 3. Peloton decelerates. We'll start with Blake. D2C exercise equipment company Peloton just logged its smallest quarterly gain in subscriber growth since it became a public company 2 years ago, notes Sharon Turlop of the Wall Street Journal. The number of people subscribing to Peloton's remote fitness classes reached 2.5 million at the end of September, as the company warned its annual revenue could be nearly 20% below its earlier projection. Peloton booked a net loss of close to $400 million in its latest quarter versus a near $70 million profit a year ago. So Blake, Peloton decelerating, what's the point?
I don't think it's really that big of news that something that grew so fast during the pandemic, which was like literally a perfectly suited time for them to really take off, that they've lost a little bit of steam, because especially like exercise is a social thing for a lot of people. And if they can do it in person or outdoors in nice weather, then it's going to be an option that people are going to want to have. I don't think it means that the, company is going to go bankrupt in a year. I think it's just sort of a sign of a little bit of a tapering off.
Rahul?
Yeah, I love this quote from the Peloton exec, which was, "There remains a lingering perception that Peloton is a luxury item," end quote. Yeah, that's because you guys charge $1,500 for an exercise bike. It is a luxury item. I think people are feeling increasingly comfortable exercising outside and in gyms again. So, I think those people are going to ask themselves, why should I buy the cow when I can pay, $30 a month for the milk being going to the gym in my confused metaphor.
Extra points for the metaphor.
How
Made
can I
little
follow
to
that?
no sense. You can't.
I can't.
Moving on, round 4. No, go ahead, Susie. What you got?
No, I was just going to add that, but I don't know if it's worth adding now. I think they've hit critical mass, and I think it's worth pointing out that they are growing. They're just not growing at this fictitious expectation, and it's not just about the world opening back up again. It's that they had a defaultive product, so they have branding issues on top of supply chain issues, on top of it not being affordable for many, many people. Of course, it's going to be hard to comp the numbers like Blake was saying.
Mm-hmm. Peloton, they taken on strength training. They've got a $500 guide camera system, which they're looking to put out in 2022, which will be the cheapest of all of its products. This device displays workouts and tracks your real-time movements to help you keep form, according to Chaim Gartenberg of The Verge. We move to our final round. Children using social media. We start with Rahul. Half of 10 to 12-year-old kids use social media, and a third of 7 to 9-year-olds do as well. Notes a new national poll by health news company Medical Express. The number one parental challenge when monitoring kids' use of social media apps was that it was too time consuming for them. 39% of parents saying this, followed by children finding ways around parental controls, 32%, and struggling to find the parental controls, 21%. Rahul, children using social media, what's the point?
Yeah, I think these figures, just to call back to our early conversation about Facebook, just illustrate how difficult it would be to regulate Facebook in any new way. They can't even keep 13-year-olds or 13-year-olds and younger off of their platforms, these social media networks. We can talk about all the ill effects that social media can have on kids, just like alcohol, but we're not really prepared as a society to protect them. And, I think it's just, it's going to be a rough road ahead.
Susie?
I was confused about what the definition of social media is in this context, because the writer does talk about video games as well. And I think we have to be able to make the distinction between like watching TV on YouTube as social media